And welcome to this wrap-up session of the Sterling Summer Learning Series. I'm Bob Madeiros, a co-host of the Sterling Visionary Voices podcast, along with Dr. Laura McNeil, and I'll be your moderator for today. I'm excited to welcome you all here to this final session, and in respect to and to follow the standard that was started before. Before we go much further, I'm going to do a quick review of last week's session. Monique Akanbi, Accountability and Crucial Conversations. Um, Crucial conversations are defined by high stakes, strong emotion, and differing opinions. And that kind of makes them both challenging and deeply impactful. Quote, silence and avoidance never solved accountability problems, they only multiply them. She talked about fight or flight responses and how there's this continuum from violence to silence, are those bookends, and that a healthy response is to choose awareness, courage, and connection. She talked about 7 skills of crucial conversations. Really, the overarching message is to emphasize the need for amplifying diverse voices, expanding access to ideas, and inspiring change. Um, she also talked about 3 levels of accountability, both personal, team, and organizational. Discussed some levels of accountability from comfort zone, learning zone, apathy, and anxiety. And that really growth only happens in that learning zone when both safety and accountability are strong. Uh, to summarize in a quote, the best leaders don't create followers, they create more leaders by holding people accountable to their highest potential. All right, well, it's my pleasure now to introduce our panel of experts that we have for this final summary session. I'm going to start in order of appearance throughout these workshops. First is Roland Martinez, Deputy Director, Florida Department of Health in Broward, and Sterling Board Chair. Welcome, Roland.
Hey, Bob.
Okay. Next, we have Dr. Jason Lansandrini, Head of Ethics for Wellstar. Jason, are you there?
I got through the technical difficulties. I'm here.
Yes. All right. Okay. Next, we're happy to have Nicole Solomon, the founder of Solomon Leadership Solutions. Nicole, I see you there.
Hey Bob, hi everyone.
Excellent. Uh, Next, after that, we have Ala El Hawagi, the chairman of the board, Sterling International. Ala, I see you. How are you?
Hi, Bob. Hi, everybody.
Great. And our final panelist is Monique Akanbi, SHRM Membership Initiatives Director. Welcome, Monique.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Bob. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. As a reminder, as has been mentioned in the lead-in, all the details from each of these past sessions are available from the video to the slide deck as well as notes for each of those sessions. So in case you missed any of them, you can always catch back up. Which really brings us to this final session, a capstone review of each of these presenters. As you may recall, Roland Martinez kicked us off with this series with a discussion of key leadership competencies and left us with that understanding that these competencies are interrelated. At this wrap-up session is really intended to bring that point into sharper focus. So, with that in mind, let's begin with our first question, and I'll kind of open the floor to our distinguished panel on the concept of the integration of these competencies. How do the 4 leadership competencies, and a reminder, integrity, influence, change, and accountability, currently show up in our daily leadership behaviors? And where do we see gaps and how they reinforce one another? Who would like to take that one first?
I can start, Bob, if you allow me.
Certainly, Allah.
Yes, being a highway engineer in my first life, I always use the traffic analogy. So to connect those, I always say that integrity is the guardrail on the road that keep the traffic channelized. However, through our driving practices, we influence others and we get influenced by other drivers as well. And that gives us the ability to change lanes so we don't fall in an accident. So change is very important for the safety of us and others. And at the end, we are all accountable for our own safety and the safety of others. Where through my work I see the biggest gap, I see it in accountability, to be honest with you. And I've done presentation at the conference that says we lose a lot, billions of dollars because of accountability. And the easiest way to hold that is to have a very clear business plan that says who is doing what, when, by how much. As simple as that, and follow on that.
Very good, Allah. I love your
So
analogy.
Bob,
Yes, sir.
it's Roland. Listen, I think that what we could add to that. That was great. I love that analogy. That was fantastic. I think one of the things that you can take away from all four of these competencies, right, is that they operate all the competencies that we've chosen for this series. They all operate like muscles, right? You're picking up something, and they all operate like muscles in your arm. You don't just use one muscle group to be able to do, one muscle to do that. You use multiple muscle groups to do that. And so you all interrelate with each other. I think that's the first most important point is that they all work together. Okay. Number two, the deal is with these is that you got to practice them all the time, right? That's the only way that you get really, really good at doing these things is that you practice them all the time. Now, these aren't necessarily, even though they have technical components to them, they're not really technical components. I think that Allah, when he did his presentation, one of the things that really came out with regards to change management was that it's a humanistic model, right? It's about the people, right? The technical problems in an organization are pretty simple to solve, right? We just got to do the math. All the engineers that are on the call understand this. But the real issues, the real things that we really wrestle with on a daily basis are the interpersonal, are the people pieces. And all of these have that thread that goes through them, whether it's integrity and character, whether it's influence and communication, whether it's change, or whether it's accountability and crucial conversations. They all weave into each other to be able to communicate what it is that we expect in the organization and how do we care for the people that are doing the work for us. So that's kind of where I would leave that.
All right. Very good. Very good. Anyone else of the panel want to share anything on that concept?
Yeah, I'll share a little bit, Bob. What Roland said just stuck with me on a couple of things, because they all do have to work together. And strong leadership kind of requires that. I think, another example to think about is, holding people accountable, but you haven't communicated with them expectations or you haven't built trust with them, all of those things, right? So I think that kind of shows that integration of the different concepts we've talked about, right? So if the leader themselves aren't role modeling integrity, if they aren't practicing a positive and appropriate influence and communicating well, then it becomes a little bit more difficult to hold people accountable if you aren't really building those relationships. Like Roland said, we're in the people business.
Mm-hmm.
Bob,
Thanks, Bob.
I got one thing to piggyback on Nicole now. So she
Sure.
stimulated something, and so did Roland. So
It's all
Alec
working.
likes analogies. I'm gonna give you another one. I don't know how many of you in here are gym bros, but I used to be a long time ago. I used to like going and working out. Now I just like sleep. Is what I prefer to do. And so we've all seen the guys who are arm guys or gals, and we've all seen the guys or gals who are leg people or are not. And when you look at them, just like in these four competencies that he's talking about, you think, I mean, I'm not going to judge you, but the short is they look a little weird. If you're only working shoulders and arms, you look a little off if you've never worked legs. And if you only work the legs and you don't work the shoulders and arms, you just look a little, it just looks a little off. I mean, I don't know, maybe there's cultural customs here or whatever. But I think about that in terms of the competencies. Yes, we're probably looking for a full body workout. That's maybe what we would say is we're looking for a full body workout. But the reality is all of us are not really good at full body workouts. We tend to lean into the things, Nicole was talking about this, lean into the things that we're really strong at. So I'm horrible at legs. I'm very good at I can bench press. I got shoulder, I can do those lat pull downs. I'm really good at that. And so I'm going to have just a bigger uh, um, chest, right, or bigger set of shoulders. That's okay as long as I'm still doing the work to work my legs. I think the same thing is true for these competencies that Roland, so shared with us in the beginning that we have to have a full body workout, but it's okay to have strengths or to work in depth in one as long as you have the fail safe of not having the body that looks sort of quote unquote abnormal.
And no Popeye look.
Well, as Jason's talking about that, I'm thinking about Johnny Bravo. For those of you who used to watch cartoons when you were little, big guy used to talk
I
like
thought of that.
like Elvis, kind of thing. Hey, how you doing, little buddy? Yeah, that's who I was picturing in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Bob, if I might, I like that was a perfect analogy, and I agree in terms of the biggest gap. And I believe Nicole, you said that as well around accountability. And I don't know if it's just the nature of my work, and then also just some of the things I've done with Sterling, where I see accountability always shows up. And if we think about it, accountability seems and feels very uncomfortable. But that's because we have ingrained this negative connotation around accountability because it's very punitive. And so we need to really shift our mindsets as leaders, as human beings in general, as it relates to holding ourselves and someone else accountable. Because even when we hold ourselves accountable, it doesn't feel good. It feels like we are disciplining ourselves or we're disciplining someone else because we're holding them accountable. And I think the greatest impact is when we shift our mindset around how we view accountability.
Okay, so Monique, I have to jump in right here.
Okay.
Sorry, Bob, but
No,
this is
no.
how this goes when you get a bunch of talkers.
There
Okay,
you go.
so Monique, to piggyback on that, one of my great mentors used to use the term supportive accountability. And that was a mindset change for me because I was one too, right? That accountability just always had a negative connotation. But supportive accountability and kind of how it was defined is I'm going to hold you accountable, but I want you to walk away from every interaction with me feeling like I want you to win, right?
Mhm.
That I support you, that I care about your greatest good. Now, that's really easy to say because even if you want to create that relationship with that person and that one-on-one, maybe evaluation session, just, a session or coaching session, you still have to be able to find the right words, but a lot of that is built on the trust that you've built beforehand,
Yeah.
right? The communication and the culture that's been set up beforehand. So when maybe you do need to have that conversation where maybe there is some constructive feedback that needs to happen. If
Mhm.
that employee feels like I'm going to walk into this conversation with Monique, and it might be a little difficult, or it may be a crucial conversation, but I know because of my interactions with Monique, at the end of the day, she wants me to win. She wants us all to win.
Hmm.
That's kind of that definition of supportive accountability. But I think that's a culture thing,
Yeah.
right? It has to start at the cultural level with the leaders at the top and managers at the top so that it can be really felt and hardwired in the organization. Bob,
Yeah.
I'll hand it back to you before we keep going. Okay.
Well, I got to tell you, I am absolutely amazed at how much I learned from you guys. I mean, I'm just sitting back here and letting you go wild. This is great stuff. You've talked about culture, and let's segue into culture of courageous communication. And I'll direct this one first at Monique, and then have everyone come in. The quote is silence and avoidance never solved accountability problems. They multiply them. So what norms or habits in our organization unintentionally encourage silence? And what would it take to build a culture where communication, crucial conversations expected and not avoided. Monique, what would you say about that?
Ooh, that's a loaded question in itself, right? I think where it starts really in terms of habits and organizations that unintentionally encourage silence is we tell ourselves stories oftentimes, right? And so before we get to the point of having the conversation, we've had a conversation with the person, or at least I do in my head. I've already answered for the person. I already know what the outcome is. I've already solved for it. And so because of that, I go to silence, or because of that, I go to violence, meaning I
Mhm.
attack it head on in a verbal way, not in a physical way, right? But I address it head on because I know what the outcome is going to be. So I go from silent, I go to silence because I don't know and I'm afraid of what the outcome is going to be, or I go on the opposite end of that. And so when you build a culture that creates or fosters having what we call crucial conversations. And again, what's defined by that is like there's high stakes. It is very important. There's emotions that are involved in it. I have an opinion, the other person has an opinion. So there's varying perspectives or diverse perspectives as it relates to the topic at hand. But at the core of all of that is psychological safety. I can have
Mm,
a conversation with you. For many of you that are listening, if you are a parent, if you're not a parent, you're a sibling. If you're not a sibling, you're someone's child, right? Let's start
right.
there, right? We're someone's child. There are conversations that we've had with our loved ones or people that we care about that may not have been the easiest conversation to have, may not have been the conversation that we wanted to have, but because we cared about that person, because we built a relationship, and hopefully we've created a space where we both, in whomever is involved in that conversation, feel safe enough to say, this is what I'm experiencing, this is what I have observed, you name it. But the goal is to become better. The goal, I think, going back to what Nicole said, like the goal is to be able to walk away. I care about you. I care about you. And so I think oftentimes we go to silence or even or violence because we tell ourselves stories without actually having the conversation, without
Mm,
listening to the other person or practicing empathy, putting ourselves in the other person's shoes.
That was
absolutely.
really
Bob.
great,
Oh,
Nick. That was great. I got two things here, right? I just want to, so I'm going to rip a page out of Allah's book with a brain tattoo because he's the one that coined that phrase, I guess, when he did whatever. And with regards to crucial conversations, right? One of the things we talk about all the time is that bad news doesn't get better with age,
Mm,
right? It just doesn't get better with age. And people, because they're avoiding the conflict or they're doing whatever with regards to those crucial conversations, because they're already telling themselves stories about, how this is going to be such a bad outcome and the emotional outburst is going to happen for all those things you just talked about, Monique. The other piece of the puzzle, I want to go back to something that Jason said when he was doing his session way back, 5 weeks ago. And that was in the transaction, in the interaction with you and whoever you're having that conversation with, how do you make that conversation, how do you cheapen that transaction, right? How do you not make it costly? So that, I think you said it, Jason, right? You were quoting a song. That how do you keep the important stuff from being a whisper, and
silent
and doing
whispers.
that. So you want to talk about that, Jason, real quick, because I think that's really
Y-
important in this particular.
Yeah, Roland, I actually was going to pick up right off where Monique was saying. I think about silence. This connects back to what I was talking about, but silence on a team for me is rarely about characters or individuals. To me, I think about it as like a calculation in a way. If people calculate that speaking up, saying something, doing something is going to get them blamed or ignored, and staying quieter is safer, this is psychological safety 101, this is
mhm,
what we're supposed to be at, then what ends up happening is they'll take the safer bet. We're all humans in this room together.
mhm,
Like you can tell me all day that oh, I'd stand up, I'd stand. No, if it is easier for you, the safer bet for you is to not do something or not say something. You probably will do that. But the problem to me, what I would say, and Roland, this will tie into what you're talking about. It isn't why. So the real question isn't why are people being quiet or whatever. It's what have I built that makes the culture the smart choice, right? And I think going back to the first thing, the accountability thing that everybody was talking about. So I think about it as two types of Nicole, you said it, supportive accountability. I would call it restorative accountability. That's another way I would say it, versus punitive. And so Monique is first on my screen. So Monique, I'm just going to pick on you, and when we sort of know each other. So,
Yeah.
but Monique is a type of leader, right? Who always says, "Oh, who's at fault? Why'd this go wrong? You got to do this. You got to do that." Right? And then Bob is the leader who's a restorative type of person. So he comes into the decision and he may say, what got in the way? Why did it happen? And then how do we fix it together? Together, right? Monique's method, it's not her real method, guys. I like to put people's
Not.
names on things. But Monique's method is going to get a short-term compliance. That's what she's going to get. You follow the rules I told you to do. This is the motivation stuff I talked about a long time ago, right? That's how you motivate them to get it. It's short-term fix and long-term concealment. They're going to hide things from you because they don't want to speak up. Bob's, on the other hand, tries to hold the line and keep the door open. It's not that it's perfect, right? So, what's a practical way to try and keep whispers at a minimum? Is to watch how you speak with your teams.
Mhm.
I'm an improv guy. That's what I do. That's some of my background and training. And one thing that we teach folks in improv is to stop saying "but." Okay, you'll say things like Monique will be. I'm not going to pick on Monique. I'm going to do Allah this time. Allah goes to his team and says, "Yeah, that's not okay, but." And then what happens after the but, right? I say this as a joke. There are two things that come after buts, excuses and gas, right? Like that's what comes after buts. And so that's what you're going to get after a but is an excuse for what you're trying to make a justification. In improv, what we would say is say the and sentence first. That's not okay. And I still want to understand what happened. That opens the conversation for you to actually have safety in your group to talk about, so you dissipate the whispers, right? So I think about it, and that's how I sort of would think about using and to keep that conversation going so that we don't aren't punitive with our teams and folks, but want to learn and fix it together.
I got two things. One is that I'm glad that Jason didn't pick on me for a change. And number two, that but is one of those interesting words that negates everything that came before it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, well, let's see. I'm showing 22 minutes after the hour. I got time for one more question, and then you guys really go to town on it. This is influence as a cultural force. We may start with Nicole here. The quote, influence is about connection, not position. Where do we rely too heavily on authority instead of connection? And how does that limit our ability to lead change effectively? Nicole.
Um, Thank you, Bob. I think I'll start with the analogy of a family. I know we're talking about organizations and things, but I'm a mother, and if you're a parent, you may have come from the parenting style maybe that I did, which is you do what I say, right? Why? Well, because I told you so. You do what I say because I told you so. And that can work. That can work to a certain extent. Um, in my family, one of the things I started to do, I have two daughters. I said, we're going to come up with some family rules, y'all. We need family rules. So one of the rules was in the house, everything has a place and everything needs to be in its place, right? Because I like to be organized. And the second rule is we all love each other, so let's act like it. Okay, we all love each other, so let's act like it. Um, so let's see. I wonder if these rules are actually working, right? I put them out
Yeah.
there and we talked about them. I wonder if these rules are working. I would say sometimes, sometimes. And so the question is what are we doing? So what are the systems that are put in place? What's the examples that I've shown as their leader of everything has a place, so everything needs to be in its place. So have I set up a family home and a culture where everything does have a place? Because if I haven't, then everything can't be in its place. Okay, second rule is we all love each other, so let's act like it. right? So if there's times when I'm sad, I'm frustrated, I'm tired, I'm whatever, my mom might not always come across as loving, right? There might be times where I might sound frustrated to my children when they need me to be more caring and more compassionate. So, I think about that now. If I try to translate that to, organizations, you can have the title, right, as leader and say, do it because I said we're supposed to do it.
Mm.
Right. And that will take you so far. It might get you some short term things, but having that commitment, setting up that culture, giving the examples over and over and over again, I think really kind of sets up influence as a cultural force, right? So it's the behaviors. So my behaviors as a mother,
Mm.
my behaviors as the leader, my relationship with my kids, the real authentic relationship, but my relationships with my team members and my employees, right? So that those norms become so hardwired into our environment that it becomes the cultural influence. It becomes how we interact with each other, how we make decisions, and hopefully how we move forward and have strong gains. Hope I answered that question, Bob.
Very well, very well. I'm looking at 26 after the hour. It's kind of all the time we have for today. I'd like to throw over to Roland for any kind of summation of this overall summer learning series.
Yeah. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure the last 6 weeks to listen to all four speakers talk about each one of these competencies and give us a more in-depth look at what happens. But it doesn't really kind of learning doesn't stop here, man. I'm amazed that it's been 6 weeks, Bob, that we've gotten through it as quickly as we can, and I hope that we've met everyone's expectations with regards to what they were looking for to get out of this. And so the learning doesn't stop here. I think that's where the game plays. We have many more opportunities to be able to many other learning opportunities for leaders that we have that are up and coming, right? So Bob, you're always there with Laura hosting Visionary Voices. I would invite all of you to go on those podcasts to listen. There's an enormous amount of information with these great speakers that we get that give of their time to be able to provide us, with those leadership insights and real world kind of examples of what goes on. So that's a really great place to get more learning, and that's on all the time. It isn't just a summer learning series; it is all the time. I'm going to make a plug here, right, Bob, for all of the examiners that are out there because they don't want to be lonely and be by themselves. So we're always looking for new examiners. So examiner training is the single best way for you as a leader or having up and coming leaders or having leaders in your organization is the single best way for you to learn how to evaluate your organization, right? How do you use Adley? How do you use Let's See? For those of you who don't know that, we have a podcast series that's on the website that you can go back and you can learn all about Let's See and Adley. And so if you're interested in doing that, if you're interested in finding out how you can evaluate your organizations more systematically, then by all means, put in your application to become an examiner. That's closing on September 11th is that deadline. So go out there, fill that out, and become part of the team. I think that's a big deal. I want to plug Jason and the book club, right? Jason devours books like I devour chicken wings. And so I like chicken wings. And so I want to make sure that everybody gets on those because Jason has a way about taking really complex information and breaking it down in a way that makes it understandable. So don't miss that. That's coming up on September 15th. And so really excited about what's going on there. The South Florida Summit. The South Florida Summit is our mini conference. We're having that again this year. And that's going to happen on January 21st. It's down at Zoo Miami, which is one of the premier zoos in the world. Okay. And so you can go down there. You can get a whole bunch of learning if you can't make it to the premier learning opportunity that we put on a regular basis, which is our leadership conference in Orlando. And so don't forget about that. You can start we're already taking registrations for that. You can come in and be with a lot of folks. You can find, we had somebody that came to the conference this year. It was the first time they came to the conference. They said, I found my people. And so that's where the real big piece comes, right? How do you find people that are like you? You know, for those of us who are quality geeks, you know, we go through the world, we don't find. And so this year, I want to make sure that everybody knows, because typically we have this after Memorial Day, right? This is a week right after Memorial Day. This year, it's a little bit different. We're starting on June 8th and running through the 11th. So if you've got folks that you want to send to training, if you got them that they want to learn stuff, you know, we've got 40 concurrent sessions, upwards of 40 concurrent sessions, plus great keynote speakers. I wanted to say that. So, Bob, you know, that's enough for me. It's 12:30. You're in charge. I'm not really. I want to thank everybody that's participated on the calls for the last 6 weeks. We've had incredible participation on this. It has been unbelievable with regards to this, and I hope that everybody got what they wanted. So, Bob.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Hey, just another reminder for everyone that the details for each of these Summer Learning Series sessions are going to be available and have been available online in case you missed any of them or would be interested after having this conversation in revisiting what was said. You can find those at thesterlingcouncil.org under the Conference and Events pull down.